General Manager Mina Upfield. We also have Galia Alul, the founder of Little Earth by Nabs and G. And your moderator for this session is John Rogers, the Group Head of Food and Culinary Innovation at Ethos. Ladies and gentlemen, your panel and moderator.
Playing musical chairs at the moment, just bear with us for 1 second. So, good morning. Welcome to our panelists. Thrilled to have a great selection here who are trailblazers in their own right, I would say. We have Galia Alul from Nabs and G, one of my favorite vegan restaurants, plant-based restaurants in Dubai. We have Rania Lahori, Pret to Go, fantastic, nutritional restaurant. What she doesn't know about nutrition isn't worth knowing. And then Renier Wayman from Upfield, who can cover not just plant-based products, but a whole raft of ingredients. So our topic today is very topical, I would say. It was great to see the very first panel discussion mention and reference the vegan or the plant-based movement that we currently have in the industry. To give us a snapshot of what we're going to cover today, looking at consumer behaviour, how has that affected the ingredients availability, and also how we think as operators and development. Also, the impact of the products available with the current supply chain issues that we have globally, and also innovation and future thoughts, which is key area for all of us, I would say, on the stage. So just give us an idea of plant-based. I think historically we would all agree that we would associate plant-based with expensive, not sustainable for margins. But to give us an idea, Sweet Green, fast casual restaurant in the States, they've just traded at a value of $6 billion, which is, I think we'll all agree, would be beautiful for our own restaurants and our own businesses. Not to mention McDonald's also having the Beyond Burger in the States now. They're expecting to average 25 orders per day, per location, an increase of $200 million of revenue. So I think it's a fast-growing area. So with that in mind, our first question to Rania: how have you seen consumer demand change in the past 12 months?
Good afternoon, everyone. Big thank you to Fast Food Convention for putting us all together. I think it's been a while since we've ventured into congregating. So I think for Pret to Go, we have observed, obviously, being at the helm of gut health way before anyone else was even thinking of it as a trending term. We're celebrating 7 years in the business this month. There's been drastic changes in consumer behavior. I think during the lockdown, at the onset of the pandemic, you could see a lot of people indulging in varieties of food that were not necessarily focused on health in a direction. I think I can safely say this is the first pandemic for most of us, if not all of us. So there was a lot of stress eating involved, myself included. Now that we are seeing the footprint back in the market, we've obviously seen a lot of our consumers making more conscientious decisions than in the past. I think a key element, or maybe two of them to note here, is that the factors that play a role are the depth of knowledge of the customer and the challenges of communicating the product. When you marry the two together, you usually see that customers can go from being vegan to plant-based as a choice. And I think my panelists agree. We had a really interesting discussion around this, and I'll leave it to them to explore it further. But I think the nuances of being vegan over being plant-based, we're seeing it with our footfall and in-store traffic on a daily basis, where when you have a conversation with your consumer, they very quickly say, well, no, actually, I'm not necessarily dairy-free, but I'm definitely plant-based. And it's been a great learning curve for us, but I can see the dynamism coming in to the customer's mindset as well. And it's ever fluid. I think they're also realizing we live in very challenging times today, so they keep that mindset very fluid as well. But it's a very interesting direction that it's headed in.
Absolutely agree with everything there. And out of all your customers, would you say, percentage-wise, would you say they're vegan, more plant-based or vegan, or?
I think, and because Pret2Go does organic coffee and good-for-you food, I'd say just, dissecting between the business, I'd say a majority, surprisingly, of my customers in the beverage side of things or the coffee are vegan. So we've always seen, from the onset of founding the brand, we always had on offer, dairy-free options, and we've seen them particularly take off post-pandemic. On the food side, I would say there is a preference for plant-based over staunch vegan.
And how have you found the communication challenges between staff and customers?
I think you're taking on side our behind-the-scenes discussions here, but it's been really interesting, where sometimes my team is rather confused because, an incident that I think John wants me to talk about is where literally a customer came in, mentioned to one of my staff that he or she is vegan, and my staff didn't realize that offering honey was an issue at that point of time. So I think there are certain nuances that the team is dealing with, but as an overarching understanding, every time that we in our team briefings talk about sustainability and good for the environment, that sort of messaging always really sticks with the team. And from that, they can then further add logic to the story and understand where they lie in terms of communicating vegan options and where they lie in terms of communicating plant-based options.
I think it's an ever-learning curve for the staff, especially. And I think there's an increase of even chefs who will call themselves vegan chefs. I don't know about you, Galia, how have you found it? How have you found the communication with the team and the members of your team to the customers? And
Hi. Actually, it's a continuous learning process. When we first started in 2017, this whole concept of plant-based nutrition, plant-based offerings for our team was like completely new. They had no idea what it meant, and actually we had to do a lot of communication and a lot of training internally to explain that this food, is plant-based food has different benefits to it. So it's a continuous learning process, and I'm happy to say that now I'm really proud that they're actually embracing it themselves. Some of the team members actually embraced it themselves, this whole lifestyle, and we're seeing a lot of consciousness, especially now with COVID. One of the benefits of the pandemic is that people have become much more aware, conscious of health, basically through food, like seeking out restaurants that offer healthy options. And this is amazing. Most of our clients, especially the meal plan clients, 95% of them are non-plant-based. They're all people who eat during the week. They eat their meat and their chicken, and they want to go. You're one of them, right, John? You mentioned that?
I eat too much meat during the week. During the tasting, so the weekends I try and be flexitarian.
Yes,
it's the popular term, I believe. So, absolutely.
So our message is at Little Earth is we want to promote health through food as opposed to promote veganism as a concept. The whole education around it is very important, I think.
And how have you found the the perception of the quality of the product from the customer?
From the customer's perception. I think the demand has been more, no, they're much more conscious, as I said, and they're much more demanding of quality. I mean, and this keeps us on our toes and keeps us encouraged and actually gives us more energy to create and and provide a lot of options. And this is, this is, I think, the positive aspect of this whole consciousness around this plant-based nutrition or lifestyle.
And then, Renier, how have you found the availability of the vegan products compared to how it used to be?
Well, I think you're asking the wrong guy, because we are working every day on availability of plant-based products. But I just wanted to mention some other points when it comes back to the demand or the perception of the people. You just mentioned 2017, right? That's 4 years ago. It's amazing if you look at how things have changed in the last 3-4 years. And this is very much the concept of exponential thinking, which is very difficult for people to normally do. Because basically with exponential thinking, you need to look at the last 2-3 years in order to predict what happens in the next year. And just to give you some examples, and I wrote it down, if you look at the number of outlets in the United States that were serving plant-based hamburgers, it was about 4,500 or so, 3 years ago, 4,500, yeah. Now, it's 1,500 in 2018. In 2020, it was more than 50,000, and this was last year. So probably it has topped more than 100,000 outlets who are actually serving plant-based hamburgers or cheese hamburgers. So this is the concept of exponential growth, and it's phenomenal what it does in terms of everything, including in terms of availability. Because we as a company, right, we are trying to lead the adoption from dairy to non-dairy, because that's our passion. But we also try to cater and just follow the speed in which these developments are taking place. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, it's a very fast-moving sector, definitely. And Galia, how have you found the evolution of the vegan products coupled with the consumer appetite for them? How has that changed the way you look at menu development?
Yeah, to see, I mean, I agree with the winner. I mean, to see that mainstream brands are offering plant-based options that are easily available in supermarkets and in restaurants and in businesses, it's quite impressive. I mean, it's, and for me as a person who embraced this lifestyle, now I can go and I have a lot of options. I mean, that was 5 years ago. We didn't have that option. And also at the restaurant, it gives you a lot of room for creativity, room to actually go and find tempeh, for example. This is a very important staple ingredient in the plant-based cuisine that was not available 5 years ago. Maybe if it were, it was probably expensive. And now you have people locally producing it. So it's really amazing.
Yeah, and to add on that, I think what really helps to understand why this is going so fast. If you imagine that more than 50% of the population in the Gulf is a millennial, more than 50%. In the US, by the way, it's only 25%. Out of the millennials, 60% of them consider themselves as a flexitarian. Yeah. 60%. That's amazing. There are 300 million people in the Middle East region, right, in North Africa. So can you imagine how fast this is going? If you take the US, not as an example, but just if you look at the US, right, I think about 10 to 15% of QSR outlets are now serving more than one dish, right, on their menu. I think in the UAE it's less than 10% at this moment. But if you consider the fact that 25% of the population in the US is a millennial and more than 50% here, probably we are a little bit behind now, but 2 years from now, 3 years from now, we will be ahead of the game across the globe. Yeah.
Yeah, you referenced local producers, even like the likes of Healthy Farm, who produce plant-based products, you know, aqua kale we spoke about that you use. How have you seen that filter into the kitchen's mindset, I guess, for both of you? How has that changed the way the chefs work and the products they use?
Should I take it first? I think for us specifically, John, I've seen it that it's almost a dichotomy of situations that previously when Rainier was highlighting how much of the statistics have grown, at least when I started the business, I struggled. I struggled even with either the MOQs were ridiculous if suppliers wanted to get in plant-based product, or there was just, you know, a huge challenge in the kitchen that, is this really the need of the hour? Do we really need to innovate? Do we really need to create for what might end up being maybe 5% of our customers or contribute less than 10% of our revenue stream? Today, just to even touch on that, there's a huge shift in the mindset. As you earlier touched and even Galia mentioned, there might be chefs who advocate or, you know, simply pride themselves on being vegan chefs. But I think where our struggles are real in the kitchen is that we see the factoring in of a lot of admin and process and supply chain logistics that it almost strips away from the creative energy of the chef at times, because he might present to you a product or a menu item and you say, fabulous, you know, hits the right profile of taste notes, you know, it's well managed in terms of its composition. Can you go away and put a pricing together, and can you ensure that there's enough supply for it? And that's when they get bogged down by all of those factors that I just mentioned, and they come back and they're not ready to do it again and again. Next time around, they question you, do we really need it? Because last time around I went down the rabbit hole. You know, it doesn't result in much at times.
Same for you, Galia?
Same for us. I mean, it's a continuous struggle. It's a continuous struggle to strike a balance between making sure that operation is profitable, making sure that everything's, makes sense price-wise, and at the same time, making sure that you actually respond to the market very quickly, especially now, as Weiner said, the demand is changing and it's growing, and for you to be, basically up in the game, I mean, you have to be, so it's a continuous challenge, yeah.
And I think also with just highlighting the fluid times that we live in, correct me if I'm wrong, but sometimes depending on imported products becomes your biggest nightmare in the current day and age.
Yeah. I would definitely agree with that. The scarcity of some of the ingredients recently is, I'm sure you'll all agree, been quite scary. For all of us, I guess. Moving on to our final points of innovation and future thoughts, which links into our previous parts. Renia, how have you found plant-based eating here in the UAE? It's obviously here to stay. How do you see the coming years? Or correct me, year, we don't want to talk in plurals at the moment, but how do you see the next year for yourselves?
The future of food is plant-based. It's required. Everybody sees it. Everybody knows it. I think it's our job, or it's my job, right? It's my duty almost to understand what exactly makes restaurants understand their role when it comes to guiding the people to go plant-based, because that's how I perceive the chefs, right? They are the artists. They are on the front row to experiment, to try to understand what it makes in order to replace a dish completely plant-based, right? And not compromising on performance, on taste, on consistency, etc., etc. And we know it's working, right? We know it's possible. It requires a little bit of effort, right? It requires a little bit of ideation, but that's what chefs are all about, right? And I do think that chefs, let's be honest, they are most of the times being reckoned on the savings they make on ingredients, right? I think when you take a look at, let's say, Domino's, right? They serve 3 million pizzas a day. That's 1.7 million kilos CO2 emission a day. So they are now trying to understand, okay, how can we develop menus in which targets are not only about profitability, but how can we actually adjust our menus in order to significantly reduce our footprint? And if they don't do it, I think a few years from now, regulatory requirements will force you to do it, if not consumers have done it already for you. Yeah. So this sounds a little bit negative. Let's try to be on the positive side. My job in the next year is just to make ourselves, ViaLife, available as much as we can, and to help chefs see how easy it is to switch to plant-based.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, from my background in the kitchen, I remember you put butter and cream and everything. The chef would always tell you, you put butter in it, it tastes better. But life isn't black and white. It's, you know, it should be drawn with pencils, not pens. I think it's really important that as an industry we move towards the plant-based, replacing things like dairy, cream, it's much cleaner, flavors even. How about yourself, Galia?
You know, I agree with Wayner. I mean, the future is plant-based. And I think at Little Earth, what we did is we've invested 5 years of our time thinking more of quality, education, raising awareness than actual. Of course, profit comes into play, but then we've really spent so much time on the product. And I think, you know, we've built, I'm happy to say that we've built a culture of awareness within the dining experience. A lot of people would come to us asking questions about how can I change my diet, how can I be more healthy, and pre-pandemic we used to have like people talking to each other at the restaurant. So I think I'm very proud to say that we were part of this movement, and I hope that this will continue to be the future. And I think what we discussed that previously, I think now we need to together as a community try to demand more attention to this sector, to keep it alive, to keep it more profitable, while it's trying its best to be sustainable. I mean, I think this is a question that requires a whole other conference, you know, dedicated to really helping such businesses that actually genuinely care, and I think this is a point that we need to all focus on, genuinely care about the customer health, you know, and well-being. Not just about, okay, profit margins are very important, it keeps us alive, and, you know, but genuinely care about the customer. This is the culture that I think we need to focus on moving forward, because the future is plant-based, you know.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think just looking at the shift in what's happening activity-wise in store, I think we benefit from always having those interpersonal interactions with the customer. And so at Pret2Go, we launched a live bar segment. You know, for 3-4 plus years, we were purely grab and go. And at some point, I realized that what's about to happen, we won't be able to accurately ever forecast it. But you can see that there is a need amongst the customer to come in and maybe behave flexitarian on a certain day. Which is why in the live bar today, if we look at the segment, maybe only about 25% is animal protein, and a huge chunk of it is all vegetarian options and vegan options. And basically, it's completely customizable so that they can build their own vegan option, they can build their own plant-based option in that bowl. And for many people, they walk in and they say, this is my remedy to eating better every day. I don't have to complicate the thought process. I just need to have my internal knowledge of what works best for me. And if I can pick and choose from that, I'm, you know, a happy customer at the end of the day. And we can see it's more and more in that direction, that maybe at one point we had 68 plus SKUs and a minority segment was plant-based or vegan as an offering. Today, 75% of the live bar is allowing the customer to be as flexible as they want to be and growing. Every day I'm reading feedback forms that are collected from customers, and they're asking for things that, you know, I might not have even heard of. You know, a while back tempeh was requested, and we're working towards introducing it in the live bar, but they're at the forefront of it, you know, leading the demand segment for us. And I think that's really good, and I couldn't agree more with Galia that it's a discussion that's beyond just the restaurants. This is going to take a few people coming together in the community a few industries coming together, and dare I say, it's, I think Mr. Mubarak touched on it earlier in the day, the aggregators. They are a much needed, you know, they need to come to the table. They're a much needed industry that can't be forgotten. I'm having conversations with, I think my children are called the Gen Z segment, and they asked me, my 6-year-old son asked me, why can't you offer it for a lower price? Because he said, I'm learning about all the things that hurt the environment. Are you doing anything? I said, yes, I am trying my best, but then, you know, the cost element is involved. And he said, why can't you offer it for a lower price? I said, because between me and the customer now, there's a very dangerous but key party involved. And he said, well, you got to have a chat with them. Mama, you always tell me everything gets solved by talking to one another. Why can't you go and talk to them? I said, yes, I will. You know, I'm definitely a supporter of DRG, and I hope that it's very heartwarming to hear that Mr. Mubarak is leading that discussion, but somewhere they need to make space for plant-based menus getting some sort of benefit so that we can continue to grow this industry further.
I think we need to send your son to be the lead negotiator with Deliveroo, I think.
He might just take it up.
I think it'd be good. So I'd like to thank you all for your time. I'm going to hand it over to Renia now and Violife, who's going to show a short presentation and with a few closing remarks. Thank you.
Yeah, just, I'll take 20 seconds before we show a quick video, don't worry. Thank you so much. I, as much like this discussion as our discussion 2 days ago in the Bikers Cafe, right, in Alcuz, thank you so much. It's just really exciting to speak about this subject, right? And we're not perfect, right? You're not perfect. We're not there yet, right? But as long as we acknowledge that, and as long as we know the light at the end, right? Whether it be 10 years, 5 years, or 15 years, it doesn't matter. It will happen, right? So it's just, yeah, thank you so much for your contribution. And thank you so much. Of course, we have a beautiful booth of Violife just around the corner. I'm with my team, with world-famous Chef Marwan over there. And thank you so much. Maybe we can play a very quick video.
People now, they're much more conscious of what they eat and the way they eat. The amount of requests for vegan food, for dairy, gluten-free is phenomenal.
3-4 years ago, 10% of our orders were vegan, and now about 30-35% of our orders are vegan. What I love about Violife is that it tastes great, it melts really easily on the pizza, and the texture is fantastic. We put our heart in our pizzas, and Violife really helps with that.
All my diners love these plant-based dishes, and they sell really fast. This is helping me build a stronger and more sustainable business that brings more customers back.
Well, thank you very much, panel. You are relieved of your duties and you can go to... That's a drop the mic effect we weren't expecting. Right, all this talk of food, I'm expecting everybody's a little bit hungry. I will give you some good news. In 15 minutes, lunch will be served outside in the main foyer. We have 3